to welcome Councillor Kenny MacLeod from Scarpy to his first Audit and Scrutiny meeting. Welcome, Kenny. And I'd also like to welcome Rachel Brown from Audit Scotland, who's present to present her report at item 5 of the agenda later on. So before we begin the meeting, I'm going to ask Councillor Tronny McKeever to lead us in a word of prayer.
Nahal Tanyev, Glóriach Danams Gnigitariach. As in Tartankut, Eilean, as on an Harami Kanach an Yoch, Kakut, as an Humor agus Eilean. As Tartankut is on Hekniolas, agus Nuhuman ha Gaber Ganurigan Shinigianu. As Tartankut Nahalahar is on you, agus Gamu Kura rain, as Hashin Despot, agus Tinko Kogunier in a different cusper and hacking the Flaram Akin. As in Tartankut is on Yatsen, Yesich, Nahashkin ha Tartkaina Carmen Shinigianu. As in Tartankut is on Lukoberg Gileer. Oh, Roornishka can vary. No, but we are had Janugain, Gachla. A gammon, a tinnard, a nuggy, Trachain, Tigus, me wog for Fagin, Bachorbi, Nebihiolic Nahad. As in Tartankut, Yatsen Netriakanakagal, Nebliondachan who got Korain, Agus, Famer at Gain, as in Nocht Camu Koru, Gebit had o Yanu, then Liadard. As in Tartankut, is on Yatsen Hast Korain, Agus Camu Furach Koru, Gamrosnachiska, Tartnjarskive Gachla. As in Kiri Camu Mogil, Orison have a rowan in the rest. Agus Hualshin ye, so you could do like a sneherig. Can you second day, and now lad the hurt gain? As in Jidach man fiar ha fast in the sleeften. Gabi Harris was a guy, Gabi ate around. So ne get the Yatsen in it, that's a note fast hot chow. As Tartgain, you thank you to Shon and Huttiger how Tartgain be Fiachini Chinko Cogunian Karst. Agus a Ruchke Yatsen Hashin Shosh on Ruchke. As in Tartankut Shon clown. Abi Koru grew here on Lachen Nogi, Mastigna Dorch Lachen. As in Tartgain, Tankut, is on a Hulakal Houjan again. As man who dang Holian as mothers than Nias and Nuniak again. Honishing Masha, the Nahawa Kruger again. And then he is kind of headed in the honishing the Bountons, the Glauntons, the Machrichens, the Trians, the Hillanen. Hulakalcha boy. Can you learn girl more than that? You can neither run Capriarish. As in Tankut, is on a Horam Vianiho. I guess he drew in your shots as in ye. Kinko Cogunian, as in noch as a Vies Cormach. Magin your Pekman, Glay Augustinian. Escachias, Amen.
Thank you, Councillor McKeever. Now, you're all well versed with the conduct of the meeting, so I won't need to remind you of the procedure. So we'll move on to item 1, which is the minutes of the meeting of 18th June 2024, and that's for approval. Agreed. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items on the agenda, and it will be helpful for members to express why they're declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams using the function. I'm not seeing anybody either in the chamber or remotely, so there are no declarations of interest to record. No, thank you. Now, with the committee's approval, I've been asked to take item number 14 first of all, because the officer who's going to speak to the report has got to go away to a meeting. So, with the committee's approval, if we move to item number 14, it's a follow-up report from internal audit. It's waste disposal and refuse collection. It's a report by the Chief Internal Auditor has been prepared following an internal audit review of the waste disposal and refuse collection as part of the operational annual internal audit plan for 24-25. The purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the CONUS arrangements for the operation and management of the waste disposal and refuse collection. And I'm pleased to say that Eric Geddes from the internal audit team is available to speak to this report and answer any questions. And we've also got David MacLeod who will speak to the report following Erica. Erica.
Thank you, Chair. Our detailed findings are included in the body of the report. If I could draw everyone's attention to section 1.3, the concluding remarks. So the most significant issues arising from a review that required management attention were for the current waste management strategy to be updated, management to ensure a robust process in place following the cyber attack to monitor invoicing until the new systems are in place, and for annual documentation of risk assessments and safe systems of work to be undertaken. From the audit, we made 8 recommendations, 3 medium and 5 low grade, and we were able to, in our opinion, offer a reasonable level of assurance from the audit. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erica. And before I open it up for questions, I'll invite David MacLeod to speak to the report. Mr. MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. We always welcome internal audit review. It allows us to deal with any housekeeping issues, and they were all dealt with promptly. In terms of the waste management strategy, although it is now going back to 2012, it's still based on the background regulations. There has been a lot of changes, some of which are still to be fully implemented and fully set out in terms of the legislation. Currently, there's a new circular economy bill, and they are working on a route map and a code of practice. We are involved in feeding into that process, and there will be a more substantive update on the coroner's waste strategy in terms of these new regulations at the November series. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. MacLeod. Do members have any questions for Mr. MacLeod? No. Online? No. Okay. Members agree to note this report then? Thank you. Now back to item number 3, service improvement. It's a best value assurance report action plan. This report by the Chief Executive provides a progress update on the best value action plan presented to Audit and Scrutiny Committee in December 2022. I'm pleased to say Norma Skinner is present here and is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Comhairle's best value assurance report in 2022 had 10 recommendations, and these were set out in an action plan to the Council in 2022 itself, with actions to take forward. And this is a progress update on that action plan and the 10 recommendations. In addition, last year, Audit Scotland carried out a leadership audit, and this year they have undertaken a workforce planning audit, which will be reported to this committee in due course. As you will see in the appendix, many of the actions have been addressed, although of course this is not a one-off process, and we aim to ensure continuous improvement. By way of summary, for both the best value and the leadership audits, it's worth noting that we now have a new updated corporate strategy. We have a new climate strategy in place with the annual report due at the November series of meetings. We have a new local heat and energy efficiency strategy in place, new asset management plans, digital strategy and workforce strategies. A mid-term organisational review has been completed. Member training on strategic issues have been completed. The revised performance reporting to committees has been put in place to ensure that the focus remains on strategic priorities. We have a community engagement team in place now, and consultations have been undertaken in every ward area carried out by the leader and the elected members. Our integrated impact assessments have been made available on our temporary website and will be on our new website when it is launched. The equal pay audit is completed biannually and is available on our intranet. Annual information on equality monitoring is also in place, in addition to our standard KPIs. There's increased employee engagement in place, and we've got a revised employee forum now, and the new employee survey is about to be undertaken. Within the action plan, you will note that there are 3 areas that have yet to be completed, And we've got developing capital project templates for business cases and lessons learned. All this work is now well underway. Updating the Loitbrunna performance management framework is still to be completed, although we have recently appointed to a post to take this forward. Updating LearnPro, our online training platform, to set out mandatory training for employees is still to be completed, but is well underway. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Skinner, and it's encouraging to see the progress that has been done since we last had this report before the committee. And I've also noticed that you've covered quite a few of the points that Audit Scotland have actually raised in their report. I'm sure Rachel will touch on that in a later report. So it's good to see that progress, encouraging from my position as chair of this committee. Do members have any questions for Ms Skinner? There's Ray Mackenzie.
Thanks, Chairman. Just one. I didn't catch what you said about the employees' input. Can you explain a bit further on that and how it operates?
We've got JCC, obviously, and LNC, that's with the trade unions. But on top of that, we've set up an employee forum with representatives from every department to meet and just chat through whether that be business areas, improvement areas, joined up working. So we're exploring that. So we had the first meeting again in August, I think the end of August, and we've got another meeting scheduled later on this year. It was in place in 2020, 2021 during COVID, but it kind of slipped a bit after that. So we've re-established that. And we've also got a new employee survey about to be undertaken in October.
So Mackenzie, you want to come back here?
Thank you. That's very clear. The one point I was at this employees survey. How does that operate? Is that if an employee has a problem and wants to put forward or doesn't, or can contribute to the department or whatever the reason may be, it may be something that they want to bring forward, but due to an anonymous situation. Can you explain that?
The employee survey has set questions within it, and it is anonymous and confidential, although there is some equality monitoring within it. And we do try and split it out by service area. So there is some questions within it, but not identifiable. And that means that we can then provide updates to each of the services on the feedback on their survey, rather than it just being created as one corporate whole. And that means that the services can address their own areas. Of course, employees always have the opportunity to come to HR if there are any concerns that they do have that they want to keep private.
Thank you. I see the Chief Executive's wanting to come in online, Mr. Barr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the point's already been made, but just a word of thanks to Ms Skinner for leading this work and to members of CMT for all that's gone into it. I think we should be very pleased with the progress in that period, which is really a year and a half, during which time there's been a cyber attack and a national election. When you look at the list of complete actions, and everything that isn't complete is well in hand. And as you note, Chair, I was going to make that point too. It does cover a number of the points that are made in the annual audit report, which we'll consider later on the agenda.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you.
I should add, sorry, Chair, I should add in relation to Mr Mackenzie's question about the employee survey, we've always had a very high level of response to the survey, and of course that's very welcome. And if members have any part to play in that, we encourage everyone to participate in the survey. You never get 100%, you never get anywhere near it, but some council surveys barely reach 20%. Ours is usually between 40 and 50, which is really among the best, but we would always like it to be more than that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Just before mentioned what I was going to ask. Is it okay if we can see the template of the survey that's been put out to staff and how it differs from the Your Reputation at Risk survey that's been commended by Audit Scotland, and the differences?
Yeah,
And whether the code of conduct and the governance is included in our survey?
yeah. I think we'll get. I'll ask Ms Skinner to come in, but that shouldn't be a problem, Councillor Murray. Ms Skinner.
The our kind of reputation survey, we actually created a training course around that. That's the way we've done it, rather than it going out as a survey to all employees. We've done it as a training course where we set out everything and there's questions at the end so that we can track, you know, year on year and new employees coming in. The survey went to HR Sub, this series, so it is available online for you to see, but I can also make it available to you if you want to see it.
That's great. My other question was, the leaders took part in very welcomed community consultation meetings, and he's finished them, as I believe, and we're approaching a budget setting process. Because of the timeline was quite long, and I know it was the first one, but are we timetabled to have the next set of community consultation meetings in line with the budget setting process? And will all wards have a chance to input into the budget setting process before we're setting the budget?
I'll ask the Chief Executive to come in. I think I'll answer that. Malcolm?
Yes, I think it would be best if the engagement with the community and through the ward fora and in whatever other form we decide it take place before Christmas, because after the new year, there's usually an intense period of budget preparation. The difficulty with that is, of course, we won't know what the proposed settlement is until probably before Christmas, but clearly the time to engage on choices and potential choices is before the budget is known, so that these principles can be applied, can be reflected on and applied to the budget preparation. But before we do that, of course, this chamber will have to identify its thoughts on potential choices, on potential areas of services at risk, and on policy preferences among services, because as you're aware, we have that significant deficit to meet, which we will not, in terms as was advised to the seminar a few weeks ago, be able to meet from other sources, at least as far as we can determine at present. So before we engage with the public, we must have something definite to engage them with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any further. Councillor Mackenzie, I'm seeing you getting ready to press it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just coming back to the answer I got, which was very helpful. It's the mechanics of how this works, actually, that I'm referring to. If there's an employee survey, where does it come back to? I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, the things are, you know, chucked in the drawer or whatever, but do they come back to HR? So I know they're anonymous, but do they come back in some form to HR Sub or?
Yeah, I'll ask Ms Skinner to explain the mechanism of that, Councillor Mackenzie. Skinner?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, they are reported back either to HR Sub or to a service committee or Audit and Scrutiny. They do come back with the general feedback that's been gathered. So it comes back as kind of a corporate report to not kind of small level detail, but as a corporate report, it does come back. And that will be, the aim is that will come back here probably March, April series.
Ms Mackenzie, you want to come back?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I can see that it comes back as a corporate report. You know, a survey, it can highlight problems but it can also bring forward positive things, you know. So I'm sure somebody in that department, for instance, you know, has a particular good idea, for instance, which can help things and contribute to the running of the department, then, you know, that should be highlighted somehow as well. But specifically, I'm thinking not so much of a corporate report as a more detailed than sort of general, you know, most people said something or other.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mackenzie. I see the leader, you've been waiting for a while to come in. Paul?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just in response to Councillor Murray's question, yeah, I think Malcolm covered the point of it. We need, if we're going to go out to the communities, we need to be saying something to the communities about what the budget situation is and identifying possible options for us to take forward. So I think there's an impetus on members over the next couple of months to engage in the process, and ideally, I think November time, mid-November would be the best time for us to go back out to the communities and all wards as we did previously.
Thank you for that, leaders. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to, I just wonder, was the leader going to answer the same, but Ms. Skinner, do you want to come back to Councillor Mackenzie?
There is a corporate report that comes back to the council. The services gate reports on their own service. So the heads of service, the chief officers for their own service will get that information. And I think that's important that the services are able to kind of pull stuff together for their own area. Also, employees can raise, if they've got good ideas, that's what the forum is about as well. So we've got the employee forum to have discussion on ideas for service improvement, etc.
Thank you. Okay, so any further questions then on the best value report? No. Okay. Members agreed to note the report. Good. Moving on now to item 4, which is the finance section, annual accounts for 22-23. This report by the Chief Financial Officer seeks approval for the signing of the auditor annual accounts for 22-23. The Local Authority Accounts Scotland Regulations 2014 require the local authority or a committee of the local authority to meet to approve the audit accounts for signature. The Comhairle has delegated that matter to this committee, the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. In considering the accounts, the regulations require elected members to have regard to any report made or advice provided on the annual accounts by the appointed auditor. The annual audit report by Audit Scotland is presented to the committee under agenda item 5. Rachel Brown is in attendance to present the report. Mr. Norm MacDonald, our Chief Finance Officer, is here for the annual accounts and will answer any questions by members. Rachel Brown will then present the audit report at item 5, and once all questions have been answered, we will then come back to the recommendations at 3.1 of the report for approval. So first of all, the accounts, and then we'll move on to Audit Scotland because they both dovetail together, and then we'll come back to questions for either or. So first of all, the accounts, and I'll ask Mr. MacDonald just to introduce the accounts. Mr. MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing really to add about the accounts. They are as they were submitted in June last year, changed only for items raised in the external audit report. So nothing to add to that.
Thanks for that. So before I open up for any questions on the accounts from members, I will move to item 5, which is a report by Audit Scotland. And Rachel Brown has said will present this report and answer any questions. Rachel, you want to? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully you can all hear me. Yes, I'm bringing you the annual audit report on the conclusion of the 2022-23 audit, which, as you'll know, is rather later than planned. We'd originally planned to bring this to the November 2023 committee meeting, but following the cyber attack in November, I had to consider what that meant for my audit opinion because the audit work was not fully completed. So that's taken some time to address. I've covered that in my report. I'll touch on it briefly just now. I'll run through the key points if I may. In
In terms of considering what that impact meant, that's the first cyber attack in my career in 27 years of audit. So that was some learning for me, as well as learning for the Comhairle and for other auditors in Audit Scotland. So we had to carry out additional technical work. During the period I was considering my opinion, the pension fund's new valuation became available, so I had to consider whether that would have a material impact, and in discussion with management my view was that it was likely to create a material change in the figures as at 31st March 2023. So management requested a revised valuation report, and that did show a material change in the figures as at that date. The triennial funding valuation is based on more up-to-date and more accurate membership data for the pension fund, and that's why there's a change in that regard, which affects your accounts for 22-23. So having received all that information, my opinion on the financial statements is unmodified. That's a really important point to make to you. There's an emphasis of matter paragraph. It's not a qualification on the opinion on your financial statements. It's a highlight in the opinion to draw people's attention to the disclosures made in your annual accounts about the impact of the cyber attack and the loss of systems, including your accounting records in that regard. So that's not a modification of your opinion. That's a clean opinion on your financial statements. And given the recovery and rebuilding of systems, having that clean opinion is a really solid base to work from, because the next year's audits, but the next 2 years' audits will be quite challenging in that regard. There is an other matter paragraph. There are matters I'm required to report on, and one of those is the adequacy of accounting records. So there is a line in my audit opinion drawing attention to the fact that the Comhairle has lost access to accounting records following that cyber attack. So that is a non-standard element of your audit opinion on the annual accounts. The substantive section, so I should say there, we are levying an additional fee for the additional work to carry out the impact, looking at what was needed for the impact on our opinion and looking at the pension fund valuation. So that's an additional £10,000 fee in that regard. And section 1 of my report covers the accounts and the findings of that. It sets out the materiality levels for making our assessment of misstatements in the accounts, and Exhibit 2 sets out the significant findings from the audit of the annual accounts. The first two reflect the post-balance sheet events and what impact that has had on the accounts, and reflecting the amendments that management have made in that regard, so there is appropriate disclosure in your annual accounts of those matters. The third point around the pension asset is in there as a key audit matter of interest, because that's the first time, certainly in my career, there's been a pension asset rather than a pension liability. So auditors across the sector have had to consider what that means, and have worked with actuaries and with management to conclude that the accounting treatment of the pension asset was correct. So that's to draw attention to something that has been new for that year for yourselves and for other members of local government pension schemes, or pension funds, I should say. The rest of the points in that table are around misstatements that have been corrected by management. So that's a change between the unaudited accounts that were presented and the audited accounts that are in front of you for approval today. We're required to report to you misstatements that have not been adjusted. So there is one which is £0.6 million is the value of that. That is well below our materiality level. Management propose not to adjust for it, and I am absolutely content that management do not adjust for that. It's just above our reporting threshold, so that won't have any impact on the opinion. Exhibit 3 confirms to you, as those charged with governance, that we have addressed the audit risk we identified in our annual audit plan regarding the accounts for this year, and also touches on some less significant risks that we identified in the annual audit plan. So we are content with largely with how that's been addressed. The IT risks, the work that we undertook on that, is covered in a later section of the report, because obviously the cyber attack has largely superseded some of that work. The risks that we would have reported have crystallised because of the attack, so our reporting slightly different in that regard. We also cover, as well as the substantive part of our audit on the annual accounts, we cover wider scope areas set out in the Code of Audit Practice that cover financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance and use of resources. So I was going to run through those very quickly. They reflect the work that has been carried out in the 22-23 audit. Some points around performance reporting and best value. We have not gone back to revisit that in the period since the cyber attack, so it's reported at a point in time. And as you've seen on today's agenda and other agendas, things have moved on, and those developments will be reflected in the 2023-24 audit. So in terms of financial management, we concluded that you had appropriate budget setting and monitoring arrangements, that your financial control arrangements were adequate. We noted that the Comhairle reported a £1.7 million deficit for the year, which was 1.5% of your budget. We did note in terms of financial management and internal control arrangements that previously agreed recommendations were not implemented, particularly around IT weaknesses, and that we identified further IT weaknesses from the work we undertook on risks arising from your use of IT systems. As I say, that's largely been overtaken by the impact of the cyber attack that resulted in the loss of access to systems and meant there were workarounds put in place to ensure continuity of service. So I will say on this, when we talk about recommendations not being implemented, I'm not saying in any way that implementing those recommendations would have prevented the cyber attack. Other organisations with more robust and mature arrangements have been victim to a cyber attack. So that's not what I'm saying in my report. What I will say is, and I think it's reflected in recommendation 1, where Council chooses not to implement a recommendation, for example, for resourcing reasons, it should be made clear to elected members the risk that is borne and accepted by not implementing the recommendations in the agreed timescale. So that's reflected in our action plan at the end of the report. So I'm just making that point to elected members so that you can be satisfied if agreed timescales are not met. And I know you get updates on the implementation of both internal and external audit recommendations to consider the risk that's borne if something is not implemented either on time or at all. Moving on to financial sustainability, we identified a risk around financial sustainability, the ability of the Comhairle to deliver financially sustainable services over the medium to long term. And while we recognise that the Comhairle recognises its financial challenges and is working to address them, there's further measures to be put in place to ensure that there are financially sustainable services delivered in the medium to long term. And we note that having a medium term financial strategy should support members in their decision making around where resources are targeted towards the Comhairle's priorities. The next section is on best value, and as we touched on earlier in the agenda, there was an annual thematic review in all councils in Scotland on leadership in setting strategic priorities following the local government elections and looking at supporting of new and continuing elected members. And I brought a report to this committee earlier in the year. We also looked at follow-up of the Best Value Assurance Report, and you've had a more recent update from officers today in that regard. In terms of vision, leadership and governance, we concluded that you had appropriate governance arrangements in place. We made a point that's related to best value work about scrutiny sometimes being too operational rather than strategic, and I covered that when I brought the best value report to you previously. The annual governance statement we review, and that contained appropriate disclosure, including disclosure about the impact of the cyber attack. And we note that following the cyber attack, there was a focus very much on open and transparent communication and decision making. And we make some reference to the arrangements that were put in place. Next year's audit will review, I know you've got an internal audit review on the response to the cyber attack and lessons learned. So when that report is issued, that will inform our 23-24 audit work in terms of that. But the 22-23 report covers the initial response. There is a point I'd like to make today that I've not fully drawn out in my report, but I think it's important to draw to your attention. In speaking to other organisations that have been subject to a cyber attack and reading reports that are available from other organisations that have suffered a cyber attack, they're drawing out the point that can be quite hidden about the ongoing impact on officers, on staff of rebuilding, because that's constant. I mean, the focus was very much on continuity of service delivery, and I think we can agree, you know, that was obviously the priority. But now to rebuild the systems that are not frontline takes a tremendous amount of time and stress. And from speaking to other organisations and the learning from them, I think that's something that the leadership of the organisation should be aware of, because that's going to continue. I say primarily in IT and finance, but it may affect other officers. That's something that's not necessarily formally recognised following a cyber attack, because the focus is very much on get services delivered, get systems rebuilt, and so on. So I just wanted to make that point to you as elected members at that point. The last section of my report is around your use of resources to improve outcomes, and just to confirm that you had arrangements in place to comply with the new statutory performance information direction. That's a matter we're required to report on by the Code of Audit Practice. So just confirming you have arrangements in place, and that we make the point that performance management arrangements should be developed to have a clearer focus on priorities. And I know that performance reporting in the interim has changed and is changing, so there will be further audit reporting in that regard in the 23-24 audit, because I know that's a moving situation, and you will have received different audit reports, different performance reports since then, and that's an area of continuing development. And the last point is that there is a short action plan at the end of the report with agreed action dates. That includes the action plan from the best value thematic work as well. So some of those dates have passed, but they will be followed up in the 23-24 audit. And I'd just like to pause there to thank officers and members for all the support we've had to get through the audit. It's been, well, as I say, a first in my career to get through that. But to get to this point of having an unqualified opinion on your financial statements is a really good result to get to, and officers are to be commended for that. And I will be moving on to other audits. Claire Gardner has been appointed to the audit of the Comhairle. Another colleague retired, so we have had to change audit appointments in the midst of this audit appointment. So I believe Claire will be joining you in November, hopefully with your annual audit plan and best value report for the 23-24 audit. So thank you very much for your patience. And if there's any questions, members of my team are also joining online to answer any questions of detail. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Before I open it up for questions, just a couple of observations and points on my own behalf. It would be amiss of me, first of all, not to challenge the additional £10,000 cost from Audit Scotland for additional works. I know I did raise this at an earlier stage where I feared that the delay in presenting the accounts may lead to extra cost, but £10,000 does seem rather excessive from the ordinary layman sitting here, and I think committee and members would be of the same opinion, given the financial squeezes and pressures that we are under as an authority. The delay in getting to where we are today obviously is a bit of a concern, but hopefully, we will where we are with it now. And I'm glad you did reflect, and you mentioned in the report that you had staffing issues yourself at one stage earlier on. I'm just wanting to make sure that the staffing issues didn't incur the cost or part of the cost. I know the cyber attack's been blamed on a lot of the additional work you've had, but given that a lot of the work had been done before the cyber attack came into play, I would have thought personally would have more emphasis going forward into next year's accounts on the cyber attack. So it's really just to make sure that we're not caught in the middle of something where you may have staffing issues yourself and then we've been penalised with cost to get somewhere. So it's a bit of an assurance on that, because I think £10,000 personally is excessive, but that's just my own personal opinion. You're obviously going to be able to quantify it and explain how the £10,000 figure came about, but that's just my own opinion. So I don't really want to answer. Are you able to answer that, Rachel, or before I open it up for questions to the floor? Thank you, Rachel.
I think that's one now. I'll take both points. One around the timing and the staffing. Yes, we continue to have staffing pressures and we are recruiting, as are other audit providers, to staff up fully to address the impact of COVID. Dates back to pausing audit work at the start of COVID to allow bodies to concentrate on frontline delivery. Since then, there was debate about whether we could drop or minimise any audit work, and the conclusion of those who set the work that we do was no, we could not do away with certain levels of audit work. So we have continued with the same requirement for audit work and for audit quality to deliver that. So the one factor that is flexible in that is timing. So unfortunately, there's quite a few audits have slipped in timing. It would normally be September that we would sign off. So yes, if everything had been as normal, we would have signed off in 2023 and the cyber attack impact would have been in the middle of the 23-24 audit process. That's not the case. We have a prioritised and staged multi-year recovery programme in Audit Scotland to bring audits back to the September deadlines and different deadlines for other sectors, but to recover that debt. So we are still in that programme with an increasing number of bodies being signed off within the target timescales each year, with a view to bringing that entirely forward by the end of the audit appointment. So that is an ongoing challenge for us. In terms of the fee, that purely focuses on the additional engagement and additional work on considering what that meant for the audit opinion. It doesn't cover things like my professional learning about referring to auditing standards and so on. We convened a review panel of the ethics partner, the executive director of my business group, Audit Services Group, and other audit directors, including those with experience of cyber attacks and auditing bodies suffering cyber attacks. So the time that is input for that review and for reviewing the impact of the triennial valuation on the opinion adds up across my time, my manager's time, and my senior auditor's time on that. I'll say I have minimised that. Other bodies who have had similar triennial funding valuation impact on their 22-23 accounts, you're not the last to be signed off for last year. Their fees, as I understand it, and Audit Scotland is not the auditor of those bodies, so I don't have access to their fee information. My understanding is it is multiple times the fee I have charged that they are getting charged for similar work on the pension fund, and they didn't suffer a cyber attack. So I fully appreciate that nobody wants additional fees. Auditors don't particularly want additional work needed for that. The cyber attack was devastating and there was learning, which I have excluded from the fee I have charged you. You know, my learning process is about my professional development. It's about the audit work that was needed for that, and I fully appreciate the frustration that must have for members, but I have minimised that to the best of my ability.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Rachel. Thank you. Okay, members to Councillor Mackenzie and then Councillor Gordon Murray. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, and thanks, Chairman. Obviously, it's a unique situation that we find ourselves in at this particular time. Obviously, our officers, our own officers, and ourselves have had a horrendous, I was going to say tremendous, but a horrendous job actually trying to go back over this cyber attack. And you say under number 6 on the financial management and sustainability, Comhairle and Siar did not implement previously agreed improvements on IT, cyber security and business continuity arrangements. Further IT weaknesses were identified during the audit. This is obviously, I don't know whether it's the crux of the matter, but if I can refer to backup systems, the backup systems apparently, I'm led to believe, were also attacked, so that it's difficult to get. It wasn't a matter of saying, oh well, the thing's gone down, but at least we've got the backup here, which was taken last night, and we're completely up to date. So, what you're saying there is that there were recommendations to avoid this situation, I take it. Maybe you could expand on that. I mean, our officers have had, almost a year now of trying to catch up and to reproduce, the accounts.
Richard,
Thank you. The recommendations that we make are to strengthen IT internal control arrangements. They're not a guarantee that would have prevented the cyber attack. They were made a couple of years ago at least, some of them slightly longer, to strengthen arrangements to make sure that business continuity plans are up to date, disaster recovery plans, disaster recovery testing, and cybersecurity training they're strong controls, but even if those had been implemented, I can't guarantee that would have stopped the cyber attack. We emphasise cybersecurity training because people are the strongest control against cyber attacks. They're very sophisticated, and it's very, very easy to click on a link or an attachment. We all get hundreds of emails, often daily. So that's where we're coming from when we make those recommendations, is around awareness, covering the basics, making sure those are up to date. But cyber attacks and attempted cyber crime is constantly evolving, just as cybersecurity arrangements are constantly evolving. So I can't say that would have stopped it, but that's why we make those recommendations for improvement. So that's at the forefront of public bodies arrangements. Thanks.
Back as an eye.
Well, yeah, but the way it's raised here, it says Comhairle and Siar did not implement previously agreed improvements on IT cyber security, and it's further IT weakness as well. Were there specific recommendations made about this?
So the recommendations were around business continuity. Cyber resilience and disaster recovery plans hadn't been finalised at the time the original recommendation was made. So we have reiterated the recommendation that cyber resilience and disaster recovery plans should be finalised and approved by members. We said that we've changed the recommendation slightly on the last page of the report in light of the cyber attack, but it was around the business continuity working group should coordinate refreshed service and corporate business continuity plans. So we made recommendations around having service business continuity plans, having IT business continuity plans, and cyber security training. I think was not originally a recommendation, but it's part of the IT risks work we carried out this year, which was around what are your arrangements for, what are your arrangements to address the risks from the use of IT systems, which is largely around cybersecurity, backups, and so on, and training. So there were specific recommendations made, some from the 21-22 audit, some from the 2021 audit, and I think one from 1920. We try not to carry forward a large number of recommendations. So that's I mean, the previous audit report for 21-22 from the previous auditor also contained those recommendations.
Gordon Murray.
Thanks, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank the auditor for all the work she's done with the Comhairle and wish her all the best in her new work. This plan's got quite a lot in it, and first of all, I'd really like to welcome the action plan point 4, which is a medium-term financial strategy, and understanding that it is a complicated thing to do, especially if you've got 1 year Scottish Government settlements. But it's to be welcomed that we're going to have this as part of the budget setting exercise for this year, because in my opinion, I don't think you can have really a competent corporate strategy without a medium or long-term financial plan. The second point I was going to make was with regards to the cyber attack. I know that the costs now are going to run to probably $1 million, which is particularly depressing since it was first thought of as being costing us 500,000, and then we've got another 300,000 to build up a system to prevent a future cyber attack. So I wanted to ask, Chair, if any of the officers could answer, were any concerns raised about the resilience of the Council's IT systems prior to the cyber attack?
Just seeing who could answer that. I don't know, the Chief Executive, could you maybe answer that for us? You're on mute, Mr. Brett.
I think the vulnerability of any public sector organisation's IT system has always been a matter of concern. I think the devastating cyber attack on SEPA, on the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, whenever that was, certainly focused everybody's minds. And I remember asking the then head of IT, how secure were we? And his answer was, we're as secure as any other public sector organisation which operates with a large number of staff and members with access to email, any one of which could cause the damage it causes. So these matters were very much on the agenda. They have, of course, been reported to this committee on previous occasions. These comments from Audit Scotland have been before this committee with the appropriate management action, and the committee has questioned these. I remember questions being asked in the past, but has ultimately accepted the level of risk that we have. There is no public sector organisation in the world that could be 100% secure. You couldn't function. The important thing, of course, is to make sure that the damage caused by these inevitable cyber attacks is limited as far as possible. That's as far as I can go. If Callum Mackenzie is here as the relevant chief, be able to assist further on that question. But certainly the whole matter has been before this committee through the external auditors' reports, and if memory serves, through an internal auditor's report, and we have the committee has accepted the management actions and the risks that go with them, as sadly we all must in this climate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. We don't have Mr. Mackenzie, unfortunately, online today, so Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that really answered my question. So I'm trying to figure out, so that this wasn't flagged up internally, and was a decision made not to, increase the resilience of the IT system, given the fact that Audit Scotland had made recommendations year upon year upon year, that no one's really taken it on board.
I see.
Chair, I don't think that's the case, that anyone's not taken it on board. There was a management commentary on each of these audit recommendations before. A lot of these recommendations, and I'll ask Ms. Skinner to comment on this, related to staff vacancies, all of which have now been addressed. That's what you do. You have staff vacancies and you fill them as quickly as possible. We couldn't fill them, I think, a year ago, and now we've been able to fill them. They're not, as Ms. Brown has helpfully said. I mean, these are important matters. Would they have affected the cyber attack? Who can ever say? But it doesn't. They are not linked. I should remind members too. There is an internal audit investigation, and rightly, which I commissioned as soon as we were back up and running at a basic level into the cyber attack, and of course that will provide all the details of internal assessments. But I'm not the relevant head of service, and I can't go any further as to what was said to whom and when. That's a matter for our own internal inquiry. But like all other audit recommendations, they don't just sit on a shelf. They're not just noted. They are commented on in the equivalent report that's before you today for last year and the year before that, and the committee either accepts that or it doesn't.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Could I ask the Chief Internal Auditor, when will we expect this report on the cyber incident?
Well, it's still a work in progress just now. It's close to being in draft form, so it will hopefully be before the committee either in the November series or the February series.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
I think, Chair, can I come back on that? I acknowledge the fact that the report is coming and ongoing. I don't know if it merits a special meeting given the seriousness and the rising costs. You yourself mentioned the additional costs of £10,000, but we're talking quite a lot of money that's been caused. So I don't know if it merits a special meeting so that we can have enough time to go over certain aspects, and acknowledge that the fact that there will be a section on internal assessments of the IT, and I look forward to reading that section. I was going to ask just a general question to the auditor about how they approach auditing the governance arrangements for the Comhairle in a given year. Are you able to tell me how you approach that and strategy-wise? Thanks.
Ms. Brown, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, when we look at governance under the Division Leadership and Governance section of the Code of Audit Practice, we look at some of the basics around how you structure yourself as an organisation, how your decision-making and scrutiny processes work, your committee arrangements, and how that's supported, how members are supported in that, around learning and development. Last year we looked at induction training for new members following the election as part of the best value work. So it covers those kind of basics about how that operates, and through attendance at committees, whether it's online or in the chamber here, we look at members' level of scrutiny, that's part of it, the effectiveness of your decision making. We also look at the annual governance statement disclosures in the annual accounts to see if that reflects our understanding of the Comhairle and makes reference to any significant matters that should be disclosed, and our opinion on that is in the annual audit report. We look at any matters of governance that come up through internal audit. We may or may not place formal reliance on internal audit's work, but we take account of everything they do in that regard. Any other reports that come through this committee that might affect the governance of the Comhairle, we take into account. So those are the aspects largely that we look at. If something of interest crops up, we may undertake targeted work, but that would be set out largely in the annual audit plan or brought to a committee's attention if it cropped up during the year. It also has a crossover around internal controls. We tend to look at how your use of resources is controlled. That tends to be reported under financial management, but all these aspects of the Comhairle's work and operations are interlinked. So that's a very broad brush summary of how we look at that. If you've got any further specifics, I can talk about that too. Thanks.
Mr. Murray.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions for either Ms. Brown or for Mr. MacDonald on Councillor McInnes?
Yes, I'm not a member of your committee, but it's clear, and the Chief Executive has made reference to that, you know, that when we look at paragraph 67 there, at that particular time, we had 5 vacancies, you know, in the IT department, 30%. And it's clear that, as Norma made reference to, that it has been very difficult in finance in particular at that particular time. We're looking at a new finance director as well over a long period of time, and those vacancies now have been filled, and it strengthens the IT system significantly. And as a new member, you see the Employee Joint Consultative Committee seem to have lapsed over a period of time. It's very active now, and the ones that are on there are participating and consulting extensively within their own unions, and it's clear that significant progress has been done, you know, internally within engagement with the employees. And as chair of the HR committee, you know, they contributed significantly to the questionnaire that has been will be circulated shortly, and we will be getting feedback on job satisfaction or dissatisfaction. You know, it gives them an opportunity of expressing their views, and it's quite a comprehensive questionnaire that is going out. I think it's important. We do get a very high return on it, significantly higher than other local authorities do. But I think looking at going forward, you know, the cyber attack was a warning, and certainly we got hit, and a chief executive said SEPA did get hit ahead of us. So other public organisations UK-wide were being hit as well. We may have been the first local authority in Scotland to have been hit by a cyber attack, but it's clear that any organisation that has a lot of people that are linking into emails, attachments, other people, you know, people working from home during COVID and things like that may have had access when people are working at home. So there may be some strength or tightening up on things, you know, with remote working, you know, and whether anyone can get access to IT computers that are in the home rather than at work. But I would say that significant progress has been done over the period of time, particularly on the IT side. It does cost significant amounts of money, and at the end of the day, we would hope that the Scottish Government will at least give us some contribution towards the cost that we have incurred over the period of time. So moving forward, I think lessons we're learning to certainly strengthen the IT systems we do have, and I think we have to commend the staff and the various senior managers coming together and making excellent work in the last 9 months or 10 months since it's happened to reach the stage that we are at the moment. So I think the staff have to commended on the excellent work they have done.
Absolutely, Councillor McInnes, thank you. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thank you. Not sure, well, won't make any further comment on that, but yeah, I said myself that the staff themselves, they've had a horrendous job, and they should be commended on this. But I mean, you said yourself at the beginning of this, Chairman, that you know you're referring to £10,000, and we're now talking. You know, we're talking about up to and maybe more than £1 million at the end of the day. It's going to cost. So, did you agree, or did you suggest that we would have a special meeting regarding this? Because I certainly think we should. If even to look as much at the past as the future.
Thank you. We haven't agreed or disagreed, Councillor McKenzie, in the meeting. I think we need to wait to see what the internal auditor has to come up with in his findings, and then make an assessment then going forward of where things are, but we are in it is a serious situation that we find ourselves in. So I don't want to preempt what Mr. Gomez has and the work he's doing at the moment. So until we find out what that landscape is going to fulfil, you know, we can't really comment whether we need a special meeting or not about it. So it'll all get revealed, I'm sure, and we will be in dialogue with Mr. Gomez and the Chief Executive, and then make an analysis then what's required.
Sorry, I'm not suggesting that we have it before we hear what Mr. Gomez has to say, but certainly afterwards.
Councillor Murray, finally.
Chair, I think it's not to put pressure on the Chief Internal Auditor, but a special meeting would give us the time and the focus to really look at the issues that were involved and ensure that we're resilient going forward. So I'd like to move an additional recommendation that we have a special meeting for the cyber report. If anyone wants to second that.
Chief Executive, before I see your hands up, do you want to come in?
Chair, I think your own remarks are appropriate. We need to see what the Chief Internal Auditor reports and what the nature of his recommendations is. The committee can always take the time it needs to consider any report, and I think it's premature before even a draft report is received to be deciding on special meetings. If a special meeting is required, one will certainly be arranged, but it's for the committee to regulate its own time and process and make sure that enough time is given to the consideration of any item, and that can be done when we at least have sight of a draft report.
Thank you, Chief Executive. That would certainly be my own opinion as well, because Councillor Murray.
Sorry, Chair, thank the Chief Executive for his advice, and I don't think we're on different pages here, but I think I would like to move that we have a special meeting when the report investigation is finished, to give us the time and not delay in waiting for series to come up, because it's really important. We're talking quite a lot of money here that we need to take seriously. So I'd move that we have a special meeting when the investigation has been completed.
I'm still of the opinion, you know, that we need to wait and see what the Chief Internal Auditor has to come up with, and then see the merit of whether we need that or not, a special meeting. I've got no objection to having a special meeting. A special meeting is required, but until we know what is going to come up in the findings and the involvement with it, and again, we've got a series of meetings coming up in November. I'm sure the Chief Internal Auditor will give us an update in November of where we are with this report. If it's not ready in November, it'll definitely be February series. So that'll be my view. Gordon, you want to come? I want to draw a line on this because we're getting carried away with this. So
sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm moving it. So if you're doing a proposal not to have a special meeting and wait for the series, then you'd have to move your own recommendation. So I'm moving our recommendation to have a special meeting when the investigation's concluded.
Okay, well, I'm not
a seconder.
You've got a seconder in Councillor Mackenzie. I've got no issue with having a special meeting if it is required, but it's a process beforehand I think we need to follow, and then make sure that we take advice from the Chief Internal Auditor, and he will advise if we need a special meeting or not with the findings that he's come out of the meeting.
Well, I think it's not. The investigation happens, and then we have the time to focus on the report. I don't think it's going to have any effect on the auditor's investigation. I think it's up to us as a committee to, as the Chief Executive said, is to plan our time our meetings. So it's up to the members of the committee to decide. Now, I'm only putting forward that I think it needs due diligence and a special time to go over such an important issue.
Well, absolutely, Councillor. No one's denying that.
I don't think that it's going to affect the auditor's investigation at all. He'll finish it, and then once he's finished it, he'll let you know or the committee know, and then we can organise a special meeting as soon as.
The Chief Executive, I see your hands up. Do you want to come back in?
Chair, I think everyone is on the same page with this. In other words, that the committee will devote the time that is required to the report, but I would point out it would be a bit absurd if the report was ready, for example, in the 3 weeks before a scheduled meeting. Would we be having a special meeting within the same series when we could easily put the matter on the agenda of the scheduled meetings? The point is that the committee is given the appropriate time to consider the item in question. That's what we've done with other major audits. If they fall within the committee, then the time of the committee is extended. If they don't, or if a special meeting is needed, then one is arranged. I think I genuinely urge the committee just to leave it to the normal administrative process, but everyone has heard the view, and everyone shares the view, I think, that the committee must take the time that it requires to look at the report. But we don't even have a draft yet, and we have meetings scheduled in either late November or early December, and then again in early February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So could we defer then till the November series of meetings to see then where we are with the Chief Internal Auditor's report, and then make a decision then whether we have? Would you be in agreement with that, Mr. Murray?
Chair, I'll happily speak to Mr. Gomez out with the meeting and see what the timescales are, and we can communicate that way, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. You happy with that?
I'm just concerned that it'll be part of a agenda item on a quite full agenda at the time when we're also going through our budget setting. I want a special dedicated time to have us to focus on this rather than part of an agenda. And I think it's.
So would you be in agreement or to defer till November till we see then where we are with this, and then take this up again in November? I mean, we're not saying that we're not going to give the time or whatever it doesn't.
Why not just agree it just now? It's not going to impact the Chief Internal Auditor's time. He's going to do the investigation. That's fine.
I think till we see the draft or till we hear what the draft has, I think we need to be aware of take that forward then. That'll be my recommendation.
Well, can we test the feeling of the committee then?
Certainly, it's open. I'll open the floor to whoever else wants to.
Well, I'd like to move.
Chief Executive wants to come back in, and Chief Executive.
No, Chair, I was just going to offer to advise, having spoken to Mr. Gomez, I'll advise about the likely date for submission of a report. But we have extended meetings in the past to allow the sufficient time. It can be done as part of the ordinary series. We did that, if I recall, on a couple of occasions with the Lewes Castle investigation. We set aside a specific time to ensure that there was plenty of time for consideration. So that can be done.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald. Noddy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We had a cyber attack. We're in the process of recovery. We're rebuilding the systems. We're trying to get back to where we were, and we're hopefully building back better. That was our original intention. It's going to cost us money. We know that. £1 million is a sum to be bulked at, depending on how much of that's going to have to come out of our own coffers. I'm not entirely sure what a special meeting sets out to achieve. We can have a report on it, and it can be brought up at another committee, at this committee or whatever committee is relevant. But I'm not entirely sure what a special meeting sets out to achieve, other than what we already know. I'm quite prepared to let this run its natural course and a report be brought back to us on where we are with it. But I'm not entirely sure what a special meeting sets out to achieve. If I can have some clarity on what Councillor Murray and Councillor Mackenzie are after, I would welcome it. But I'm not, as I say, entirely sure what it set out to achieve.
Thank you. I mean, to draw a line on that, could we go with the Chief Executive's his advice more that he liaises with the Chief Internal Auditor and comes back to us then with his view on whether we have it as part of a series meeting. We're not going away from the fact we will have a meeting about it, but it's just the process and the format of that meeting, whether we use it as part of a series of meetings, as part of the audit meeting or whatever. And that recommendation will come back from the Chief Executive before we meet again in November. Councillor Murray.
just wanted to go back to Councillor MacDonald. The reason I'm asking for a special meeting is so that we've got time to scrutinise, and it's dedicated time, and it's not part of a long agenda, so that we've got the time to go over it and focus on it. And it's given its important, it's a highly important document that we're going to look at, and it'll need time to discuss. And I think the importance. So I think it should have a special meeting status, given the fact that we're talking of quite a lot of money that's happened. That's what I would say, Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting a wee bit confused here. Are we planning a special meeting after the Chief Internal Officer does his report, or before? After?
It would have to be after, because we don't know what's actually going to be.
Okay, and could I like to ask the Chief Internal Officer, is there a likelihood that you could have it by the November series if you prioritize it?
Well, it's certainly it's of the highest priority at the moment, but given the scale of the report, it is quite lengthy. It needs a lot of time to consider, and there's a lot of staff to speak to as well. So I am hoping that it'll be at a stage where I could present it in November, but it all just depends on timescales.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have any issue with a special meeting after he's done his report. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Was that the view of the committee that we have? Any other members, but any comments on? No. So we then, sorry, Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, I'm not a member of the committee, you see, so there's a lot of members here that aren't members of the committee, so we won't be voting anyway or whatever, so it goes to a vote.
Would this be better maybe coming to all members of the council rather than just the Audit and Scrutiny Committee then? You know, we take the audit report and then we assess then whether it does come to all members, because we're only a small group of so many councillors, so, and it affects everyone. Chief Executive.
Chair, the matter has to come to Audit and Scrutiny Committee first.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll sorry, Morecambe, yeah, Vice Chair.
Well, I think this is a very important document, but I don't think we should be pressurising internal audit to produce a report. We should be patient and allow it to be done, taking every consideration into account rather than purely having it available in the November series of meetings, because it's a rush job. I think we've got to make sure we're considering everything that should be included in the report.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair. I don't think we are going to pressurise internal audit. Every stone needs to be turned here in this investigation, and I'm sure Mr. Gomez is doing that, and that's why it's taking time to do it. It's a complex job, but I do understand the situation. I do understand Mr. Murray and Mr. Mackenzie's concerns wanting a special meeting, but I'm still of the opinion that until we find out the merit of where we are with the investigation, that's when we would need to decide whether we need a special meeting or not to discuss it. And I'd be inclined with the Chief Executive's advice that that's the way we should go forward, I think. But again, if the committee are wanting the meeting, well, I think we need to, we need to watch we're not preempting something here before we go forward. So I'm going to draw a line, and I'll let you come in once more, Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Murray first.
Chair, I think it's a bit unfair of the Vice Chair to say that, and I agree with you, we're not pressurising. In fact, we're taking the pressure off so that it's independent of any series. So the November series, if it's not done by the November series, that's fine. But when it is done, that we get, a special dedicated time we're allowing the auditor, in fact, it's encouraging that he will, speak to staff, etc., and do his due diligence as he always does. There's no argument with that. But I think the time needs to be dedicated for members to meet and to review solely this subject so that we are absolutely clear what has happened and we're absolutely assured that the resilience is in there. It's so important. You see the figures. So I think you're almost there, Chair, but I would just move that once the Chief Internal Auditor has completed his investigation, that we have a special meeting dedicated to that one topic. And I'm moving that, and I would like you to seek the committee's either approval or not for that motion, or you can accept it yourself.
Chris Mackenzie.
Well, there's not much more I can add. Of course, it's a serious item, and it does need. And at no time have we said that it should come before the internal auditor. So it's important that the internal auditor comes up with his findings, and then we can consider it. And it does deserve a special meeting when you're talking about £1 million and all the rest of it. But importantly, that we should be considering the future as well. So yeah, are you moving that we don't have a special meeting?
No. What I'm saying is that we wait until we get the findings of the internal auditor. Whenever it will be, I'm not sure it will be November, Mr. Gomez. I think it's quite tight. Just a minute, Mr. McKenzie. I'm not sure it will be November because I think you've got quite a lot of work to do yet. And I think it'd be unfair to us to pressurise you to get something for the November series. So assuming it will be the February series of meetings, I think then the Chief Executive could have dialogue with yourself, myself as Chair, the Vice Chair, and then see what we have on the agenda for that meeting in February, if it is February. And if it is a high agenda, definitely we give it the time and we have a special meeting. But if we don't have a hefty agenda, we could incorporate as part of that meeting, whether it be however long it would take, at the beginning of the meeting or at the end of our audit meeting. That's the way I would think would be the best way of moving forward, rather than convening especially on one day for this.
I think you're making...
Chief Executive wants to come back.
Well, sorry, my light was on. And I think the Chief Executive has spoken quite often on this matter. I don't see why you're making it so difficult. I mean,
it's not. I'm not making it difficult.
You are making it very difficult, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barr.
Chair, if it is of any assistance to the committee, Mr. Gomez, whom I assure you will take the time he needs and will be allowed to take all the time he needs to complete his investigations, to write it up in draft, to discuss it with whomsoever he needs to discuss the draft with. What I will do is have a conversation with him about a likely timescale, a possible timescale, whether accommodated into the ordinary schedule or whether a special meeting would be required. Now, that will depend on the complexity of the report. It may depend on the recommendations. But whatever is done in terms of our usual governance procedures, the committee will be given, and I know you would wish this yourself as chair, sufficient time to consider the business. That may require an all-day meeting of the committee. It may require a couple of hours to be set aside for that one report, but it doesn't mean that we can't conclude and move on other business at the same time without adding more meetings to a very crowded calendar. I would remind members this is likely to be during the budget setting process, at which a number of additional meetings will be required. But I will write round in the next week or so, following a conversation with the Chief Internal Auditor about what the likely time scale will be. But that will be in his determination, not mine.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you. So do we agree with what the Chief Executive said there? I certainly do. So, and then the Chief Executive will write out to us and let us know when we get the draft. Yeah. I mean, to move forward, I mean, we've got a proposal and a seconder for a special meeting. So does anybody else want to speak on the committee wanting a special meeting? John A. McKeever.
Yeah, we're not putting any pressure here on anybody. All we're wanting is the due process to take place and then have a special meeting if required.
So, yeah, I think we'll have a roll call of committee then just to see who's for the special meeting. And I'll ask Shona to the roll call of committee members. No, what we're trying to do is whether we have a special meeting or do we have it as part of the actual meeting. That's a proposal I would have. I would have it as part of the actual meeting. It would take however long it would take. Would it be like the Chief Executive said, would it be all day, half a day or whatever, but it would be incorporated as part of an Audit and Scrutiny meeting. Anyone want to second that? No?
I'll second that.
Who's that? That was Councillor Ian Archie. Yeah.
Ian Archie McNeil, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Finlay Stewart, do you see your hands up?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, I was just going to second that as well, but Ian Archie beat me to it, and I think we should just leave it till we get the findings and then move forward on it then. Once we know that, I don't think there's any point in having a special meeting when we don't know the findings of the Chief Auditor yet. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Okay, so we'll go to the roll call of committee members then. So it'll be either to go for the special meeting called by Councillor Murray or part of the actual audit meeting, however long it does take. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Trelawney. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just saying, I thought you were in agreement with a special meeting, were you not, afterwards, after the, is that correct?
What I'm in agreement if it
Yeah.
give it as long as it needs to take.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's incorporated if it can as part of the audit
Yeah.
on the day of audit rather than having a special day to come in and discuss it. If it merits a special day,
Yeah.
yes, fair enough. But if it doesn't,
would it not better though that all members were made welcome to a sort of meeting? You know, rather than
it has it has to come to this committee first, though.
All right.
It has to come to the audit meeting first.
Okay.
Councillor Gordon, Councillor Murray, the findings.
Yeah, just to help the vote, would you be able to read out the recommendation and the amendment so that people know what they're voting for? So if you can, yeah,
I think Shona's going to do it. Yeah, Shona.
Okay. So the amendment proposed by Councillor Murray and Councillor Ray McKenzie, seconded by Ray McKenzie, is to move a special meeting when the investigation has been completed to discuss findings of the internal investigation on the IT system, the IT cyber attack. So that's the amendment. That's the motion that you're wanting to put forward, and the amendment proposed by the Chair, Councillor Angus Morrison, and seconded by Councillor Ian Archie McNeil, is to wait until the investigation is completed and then make a decision whether there's a special meeting or it is then part of the normal Audit and Scrutiny Committee meeting.
Or as it merited, if it does merit, you know, it will be part of the agenda on the day, whether it takes a full day. But if we have to find that we have to have a separate meeting, we will. Depends on the agenda for whatever series of meetings it will be. Sorry.
So, is everyone clear? The motion is proposed by Councillor Murray and seconded by Councillor McKenzie for the special meeting. The amendment is to wait its course and see if it needs to be special meeting or part of the Audit and Scrutiny. So I'm just going to go through the roll call of the members of the committee. So, Chair. Okay. And Vice Chair, Councillor MacDonald. Amendment. Councillor McNeil, you seconded that.
Yes, amendment.
Yeah. Mustafa's not here. Councillor Fraser. Councillor John Ormer MacLeod. Councillor Johnny McKeever. Carl McLean is absent. Gordon Murray, you proposed. Councillor McKenzie. Councillor George Murray online.
Yes, I oppose the
the amendment.
And Councillor Finlay Stewart online.
Amendment.
Okay. Okay, so the amendment has it with a vote of 6 to 4. So we will wait until the results of the investigation. Take it from there.
Thank you for that, Fiona. Thank you. Okay, so moving on now. So we note the Audit Scotland report and we move back to recommendation 3.1 to agree the recommendations regarding the annual accounts report. Would members agree the recommendations 3.1? Agreed, thank you. Okay, and could I just wish to convey my thanks to Mr. MacDonald and his team for the hard and tremendous work that they have done to produce the accounts in time, the deadline date of June 2023, and also for Audit Scotland for the work that they have performed as well and produced. And we wish you all the very best in your new role. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're moving now on to item number 6, which is risk management. This report by the Chief Executive seeks approval for the Strategic Risk Register, and Rebecca MacLeod is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Corporate management team earlier this month agreed that the highest risk facing the Comhairle currently is SR2, continued reduction of income streams. To talk about SR19, widespread cybercrime and cyber insecurity, this is still a high risk, as you can see from the initial risk rating. However, it is hoped that the revised risk rating, which is the target, will be reduced to a medium, and this is because of the additional controls that have been put in place recently, the investment in cybersecurity, in resources and new technologies, which has increased the Comhairle's cyber resilience overall. There are gaps, as we've been mentioning today, at a kind of operational level within the IT service. Continuity plans need to be finalised, and more detailed cyber risk identification is required to be formalised and monitored. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do members have any questions? And this did come to PNR yesterday as well. So, members have any questions, Rebecca? No. Members agreed to note the report. Thank you. We now move into internal audit matters, item 7 on the agenda. It's the internal audit progress report for 24-25. This report by the Chief Internal Auditor summarised the internal audit activity within Comhairle and Siar for the period covering 1st April 2024 to 2nd September 2024. The activity has been based on the approved strategic audit plan for the 3 years to 31st March 2026 and the approved operational internal audit plan for 24-25. And Mr. Gomez is available to speak to the report. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. It's just the usual progress report. So it's just a note that section 2 shows some of the reviews that are still outstanding from last year that we weren't able to complete due to the cyber attack. Section 3 shows the work in progress. Scared to bring it up again, but it's just to note that the cyber attack review is underway and will hopefully be presented either in the next series or whenever it may be. The appendix to the report is just a snapshot of where we are with the operational plan for this year. But happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Members, any questions? No. Agreed to note the report then. Thank you. Item 8, we're into follow-up reviews now from internal audit. The first one's accredited training. This report, again by the Chief Internal Auditor, provides an update on the findings of the original report on accredited training, which was issued on 13th June 2023. The follow-up review is undertaken in accordance with the operational annual internal audit plan for 23-24. And again, Mr. Gomez is available to speak to the report. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. This is just relating to a report. Well, the review was undertaken and completed in June 2023. There was 4 recommendations on the original report. 3 of them have been fully implemented and options being considered for the 4th. So good progress on it, almost completed. So happy with that report.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Any questions? No. Members agreed to note it. Thank you. Item 9 on your agenda, this one's Sports Centres. Again, a report by the Chief Internal Auditor, which provides an update on the findings of the original report on Sports Centre which was issued on 21st September 2023. And again, Mr. Gomez will speak to this report and answer any questions. Mr. Gomez.
Mr. Chair, as you mentioned, the final report was September 2023. So just prior to the cyber attack, there have been 19 recommendations. 2 of these were high risk at the time. Of the 19 recommendations, 7 have been fully implemented. Quite a number of them were related to updating records and some files that needed to be done. And obviously they were lost in the cyber attack, so they have slipped slightly, but they'll continue to be followed up as part of the continuous improvement action plan. So we have no concerns over any of the outstanding recommendations, so happy with that report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Member for any questions from Mr. Gomez? No, happy to note the report. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10 now on your agenda. Homelessness. Again, a report by the Chief Internal Auditor, which provides an update on the findings of the original report on homelessness, which was issued on 22nd November 2023. Mr. Gomez again will speak to this report and answer any questions. Mr. Gomez.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, 6 recommendations. These were all low-risk housekeeping issues, though nothing concerning really. 4 of them have been fully implemented, 2 of them ongoing. It'll just take a bit more time to fully implement the last 2, but happy with them. They were just housekeeping issues, so we're not concerned over everything.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Members, any questions? No. No. Members agreed to note this report. We're now into completed reviews from internal audit. The first one is item 11, adult social work, commissioning and partnership services. A report again by Chief Internal Auditor, which has been prepared following an internal audit review of audits of adult social work, commissioning and partnership services as part of the operational annual internal audit plan for 24-25. The purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the CONUS arrangements for the operational management of adult social work, commission and partner services. And Chrissy McCauley from the internal audit team is available to speak to the report. Ms. McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. If I can direct members to concluding remarks at 1.2. The main issues from this review, we found that there was no service level agreements with the out of service providers, 17 in total. However, during the review, all these service level agreements were put in place. And the other 2 issues are low, and it's just housekeeping issues that are progressing at the moment. Thank you, Chair. Any questions?
Any questions from Ms. McCauley on this report? No. Okay, members agree to note it. Yeah. Item 12, climate change, net zero compliance. This report has been prepared following an internal audit review of climate change, net zero compliance as part of the operational annual internal audit plan for 24-25. The purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the CONUS arrangements for the operational management of climate change, net zero compliance. And Erica Geddes from the internal audit team will speak to this report. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Our detailed findings included in the body of this report. Within this report, we had 3 low-grade recommendations that are included in 1.3, and this was the climate change strategy 2022 to 2027. There was a number of hyperlinks that weren't working and directing to associated documents. The climate change steering group are to meet on a regular basis, and training is to be provided at departmental levels to engage staff on climate change and the environmental impacts. Within this audit, we were able to give a substantial level of assurance. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erica. Anyone got questions for this report? No. Okay. Members agree to note the report. Excuse me. Item 13, education provision for children with additional support needs, ASN compliance with Children's Scotland Act 1995, Additional Support for Learning Act 2004 and GIR FEC. This report has been prepared following an internal audit review of education provision for children and additional support needs, ASN, compliance with Children's Scotland Act 1995, Additional Support for Learning Act 2004 and GIR FEC as part of the operational annual internal audit plan for 24-25. The purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the CONUS arrangements for the operation and management of education provision for children with additional support needs, ASN, compliance with Children's Scotland Act 1995, Additional Support for Learning Act 2004 and GIR FEC. Chrissy McCauley will speak to the report and answer any questions. Chrissy.
Thank you, Chair. What we were looking for in this review was the adherence of policies, procedures to the various acts that cover ASN. The Comhairle are in full adherence to the legislation. We looked at sending out questionnaires to some of the staff to understand how ASN is working and to identify any issues that they may have. We couldn't visit this time of year. It was coming up to term end. So from our responses, we've highlighted them in the body of the report. And management have reacted positively to all the issues, and have set a 2 to 3 year plan in place to address what we came up with. And at the top of page 2, it's just for information. The statistics shown that the themes we have identified with ASN resources across all Scotland bodies and not just the Comhairle. Any questions?
Thank you, Chrissy. Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Just to comment that the findings and implications are quite worrying in terms of some of the staff conditions, and I do believe that you said that there'd be a 2 to 3 year plan to try and address some of these issues. I would think that some of them are needing addressing ASAP, given the fact that the children are in the school. And there doesn't seem to be any management comment about that. How are we going to find out whether these are going to be addressed sooner rather than later?
Chrissy?
Is Mr. MacLeod available to take any questions?
I don't see him online, is he? Could we get him maybe just to...
I will have to get back to you on this, Mr. Murray.
Yeah.
Great, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Will you maybe copy the committee and consider the response as well? Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Barr?
Thank you, Chair. I had a similar comment, perhaps, or just a question to officers. Perhaps Councillor Murray's raised the same point. 2 to 3 years seems quite a long time. I wonder if, as the service, presumably this will go to the service committee in some form. Is Mrs. Macaulay aware of that? Because we would need, as well as there being a follow-up, I think the service committee would want to look at that that time scale and the provision, just to make sure we're able to meet these requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. McCall.
I will speak to Mr. MacLeod about these issues and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No. Members need to note the report then. And finally, we've had item 14, so it's Performance Monthly, and that's reports outstanding, and that's before you, as noted, and that's for noting. Thank you. And the next scheduled meeting of this committee will be on 28th November 2024. Thank you very much for your attendance today and your participation. Thank you.
Cheers.